We are indeed a sector at work. We are indeed a sector that must prove beyond reasonable doubts that it understands the terrain. And we are also expected to be the engineers of what should the human capital of the country look like in the next coming 50 years. And that is not going to happen at that time. It must happen now. And I'm therefore saying, as a sector, you needed to be a bit advanced ahead of events and also have proper scientific research to put a very credible data and statistics, not just data, but a credible data. Because if you don't, you run a risk of a misinformed policy environment and a misinformed policy direction, which will result into a cul-de-sac in terms of the intentions that you have as government. Yesterday, we posed a question to you, and I felt I must pose it back again. You may run away from this question, but you'll remember me after 50 years to come. I said, is there any consensus in this country as a sector in terms of the characterization of the sector? That are we for educational outcomes or are we for learning outcomes? Or you just take it for granted, these concepts? We interchangeably utilize them, HOD, as if they mean one and the same thing. The educational outcomes and the learning outcomes. I'm raising this because, again, I wanted us to understand that the quality of planning for whatever that you plan informs the quality of the product you're going to get. Let's close the chapter. The quality of the planning, the science, the philosophy, the theory behind the planning will inform the product that you're going to get. Ndilungisa ke naba bantu bacinga into yobana umzekelo izikolo zethu zingakhe zingabi na crisis of violence when the nation is a volatile. Mweli, awuzuba nesikolo esingqongwe zi-drugs ungabi nabo abantwana abaphatha drugs esikolweni. Ayikho loo nto. And it's high time that we tell them head on. Awuzuba nesikolo esigcwalise ii-gangsters outside of the school. Aba bantwana they are coming from a community, from the womb of gangsterism to a school, and we expect that gangsterism is not going to be here. That's unscientific. That's very much unscientific. So I'm saying, whatever that we plan, colleagues, we must be able to say, how do we then be able to get the necessary productive throughput that can be able to resolve that particular prospect? Leadership is not a position. Leadership is a function. The presenter is correct here. You may be elected or appointed to lead, but fails to provide leadership. So I call automatic. It's not automatic. You may be appointed to provide leadership, but not provide it. You might be elected to provide leadership for those that are elected through a show of hands. It's not automatic. Ingxaki ke kuye kuthiwe ndabathuka kabantu ke Juda xa ndisithi i-crisis you have in the country, you run a risk of those that are elected that they can't provide leadership outside of the four walls where they were elected. They can only provide leadership to those that were delegates in that conference, not to anybody else. Because leadership goes with integrity. Leadership goes with a bit of moral standing to the society. So the presenter is correct. You may be a leader, but not acceptable. And the acceptance of leadership and the non-acceptance of leadership has got more to do with the conduct of the individual that proclaims himself or herself to be a leader. So that's why I'm saying, from an education point of view, then, colleagues, one question, the second question that we'll probably have to answer here. What are these basic skills that are so basic that a basic education in a country must possess as basic achievements for the individuals and collective in that particular nation? Mayingabiso slogan lento ka basic education. Are there any basic skills that we're offering here? There is nothing wrong to those that said contextualize this sector as basic education. But I'm then saying to you, are there any basic skills that we're offering? And if that question is not answered, this project, this program has already failed once it has not started. Next week, say finish already. It has already failed once it has not started, because we must be able to say, from the modules that you are going to get next week, what are these basic skills? When we come back after the period of induction, after the period of inauguration of those individuals that were undergoing that process, are you, in the true sense of the word, change agents? And change agents means acquiring of the skills that I'm talking about. Most of the problems that we have here, HOD, not as a sector, as a nation in general, we tend to think that we can handle matters that are scientific using common sense. Very scientific matters, but using common sense in dealing with them. And I'm then saying, it's not your problem, it's a problem that the nation must resolve. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we are in that particular space of resolving that particular problem. Because I always argue that when you have got people in this sector that are dwarfish in thinking, the nation must just close the door and go home. Uba kukwazi ucingwa apha kule department, then I don't need of you existing as a nation. Because the intelligentsia, the level of intellect, the brains, the articulation of the goals depends on the theater of ideas, which is a lecture room or a classroom. And where is that located? It's in education. So once singakwazi ucinga thina apha, forget about the development that we're talking about. Forget about it. Once singakwazi ucinga thina apha, forget about the developmental state and an ethic and efficient state or efficient government. The production that we do here must be able to resolve the problem at the level of the public service. That's why I always say, beyond just Tsipa, Upasa, Babandwan, what are these moral ethic values that these kids can learn out of us? Because Ababandwan might emulate the crisis in public service nayo yabantu abaphangela ngokushiya ibhatyi ezitulweni. And xa be-emulate laa nto kothukwe ngela xesha ngongathi yinto entsha that we have not been seen before. So that's why I'm saying this is a very sophisticated, quite a heavy subject that the presenter is presenting here. Ukhe wathi ke omnye umuntu kwenye indawo bekhenda kuyo emthatha last month. Xa uthetha the lost generation of kids, ingakufikelele na kwinto ethi mhlawumbi ngakhe kuthi kanti akukho lo muntu ufanele uba bayam-emulate. Before you arrive to say this is a lost generation of kids, ukhona na umuntu ongumfuziselo kwaba baphambi kwabo abanom-emulate so that they can bring back the ethics that are expected. That then demonstrates the content of what then leadership means. Because if you then talk about the concept of leadership, it's not just about standing in front of people. It's about whether is there anything that we can learn out of you. Both in terms of conduct, also in terms of strategic thinking. Because leadership is about strategic thinking. To see things that have not yet been seen. So that you then anticipate by planning to say, when we are around Grahamstown, we might have this problem as we traverse towards Port Elizabeth. And therefore, what are the mitigative factors that must be put in place now, here in East London, for a crisis that we might get in Grahamstown as we go to be? Hayi kaloku asuthi xa sifike eGrahamstown nawe uthuke kothuka abantu nawe uthuke kothuka abantu nawe uzuthuse. It means there is something wrong with you. So I'm saying we must be patient and try to find the solve for X in the discussions that the country is beginning to shape up so that we can be able to find a process that can deal with some of the matters that are there. There is nobody here that will change or effect the change in the development trajectory of the nation, except the people that are seated here. But unfortunately, that will need disruptors. Uba ungumntu we-status quo uzulunga kule nto. I repeat. Uba ungaba bantu bathi siqhele ukwenza ngolu hlobo. Awuzulunga because i-system apha phandle iyayichaza uba kukhona i-problem. You can deny it. We can't be producing graduates that are going to be unemployed. And akho mntu ufuna uthetha inyani into yobana anifundanga, ni-certificated. And the basic education in the country and higher education in the country must then take the blame. You can't continuously producing people that you know for a fact that these ones are not going to be employed, by the way. We are creating jobs. Creating jobs for who? Because the system itself is responsible for the mess. You must tamper with the system. Tamper with the system so that you are able to reduce the number of graduates, of qualified kids that goes to unemployment rate. Izaba buhlungu into yobana abantwana bade benze i-PhD bengazange baqeshwa ndawo. We must deal with that question. Part of the assignment, colleagues, that probably I must leave for you to go back, and it has got nothing to do with the signing of the memorandum, but it has got more to do with the building the efficiency of the system. If, Mshodan, 50% of the cohort of employees will leave the system by 2030, what is the meaning of that? Must we then develop plans then or now? Must we develop plans to respond to that question now? And if then that is the analysis from the HR's point of view about the human capital that we have internally that is expected to execute that plan, are we then comfortable with things that are accidental, or we must be deliberate on the successions? Did it change? Funeka sifikelele kwi-situation apho ingekho accidental into bayi-director, ibe well planned. Because to have people who happen to be chief directors, DTGs and HODs accidental, then the system is accidental itself. We must be able to say, how do we transcend from position 1 to position 2, from position 3 to position 4, and the capacity of the system, the capacity of the state in achieving the noble ideas. I was talking to the HOD one day, and I was saying to her, very soon we're going to have a problem here in the department. Don't say I didn't warn you. The upward mobility of the staff here is very stable. And has got a potential of bringing people outside of this department and become heads here whilst they know nothing about this department. I can tell you now. Because unengxaki of seasoned administrators ezibutharishwa yi-system, because upward ability of the system is not creative enough. Look at the cohort of the chief directors we have and the directors we have, and you compare them with other directors and chief directors of other departments, both in terms of content and also in terms of age. Now you will see that i-system yethu ayibavumeli banyuke abantwana babantu. And i-danger yalanto yinto yobana uzoyothatha i-novice ngaphandle izokhokhela abantu abayaziyo i-system. That's the danger that you are going to have. And I'm saying, don't say I didn't warn you. Currently, HOD, as part of leadership, colleagues, this is one bigger department, and it's not just big, it's also big in terms of the academic posture. I have never seen interns that are so well educated like the ones you have. And again, how do you bring them into the system before they are taken out by other sector departments? How do you then incorporate them systemically so that you preserve the skill, you preserve the academic qualifications that they have, and also you preserve the institutional memory that they have? Because if you don't do that, uzoba nabantu abahleli apha aba-applyayo every day. And once that happens, kuzoba ne-exodus of skill outside of the sector. Ungangayoyike le nto ndiyithethayo. Wena xa ubajongile uthethe ngabantu abahambayo, mna ndithethe ngabantu abahambayo, ndithetha ngohamba kweskill. Because the migration of skill outside of the department will be a crisis on its own. Because you will have to find a way of bringing back that skill, and you won't get it at that time that you want. So that's why I'm saying, from a strategic point of view, we must always be ahead of events. There was a stage here, Tsipa, when our kids were not doing ECD or foundation phase education as African people. Predominantly HOD, it was the white people that were doing foundation phase. And I'm then saying, again, that was a crisis. Do you expect a white person from East London or Port Elizabeth to be a foundation phase teacher in Nkanduli? So, our programs must be able to say, this is the picture. This is the research that is there. And therefore, how do we align programmatically our intake of people that are going to do whatever that they want to do for the future of this particular department? And I'm happy for you, curriculum, that you intervened on that one. You intervened immediately on that one in 2017, 2018, because it was an indication between at that period that, hey, apha ephondweni kubonakala ngathi ngabantu abamhlophe abafuna ukwenza i-foundation phase education. And by extension, it means uzoba ne-problem, one, ye-culture esikolweni, ube ne-problem ye-language, and two, this is an undeveloped province. One of the problems that continue to be a nerve in the University of Walter Sisulu in terms of attracting experts as lecturers there is not WUSU, it's the development of OR Tambo and KST. Why must I go there where there are potholes? Why must I leave University of Cape Town and come to Usu if then the municipality don't see a crisis of potholes as I drive as a lecturer to Usu? Why? Why must I leave best schools in Gauteng if there is no issue about the surrounding schools in Namtata where my kids must be as a lecturer in Usu? So there is a relationship between the planning of across sector departments and the throughput that we want here. So that's why I'm then saying, colleagues, let's solve the X. And let's be patient in ensuring that at least we rise to the occasion. And I just wanted to close by saying, we must find a way to place people at the right places at the right time. Place the right people at the right places at the right time. Ngenye imini ndizoke ndimbuze uLthuli as DDG about corporate services. What skills do the institution have? And what skills do the institution don't have? Yes. And what is the plan? Yes. Okay. As a DDG for corporate services, yeah. What is the plan on the skills that the institution does not have? And what is the plan of the abundance of the skills you have but underutilized? Why do you have engineers as part of the cohort in the institution, but not in the chief directorate that they're supposed to be? And what are the implications? CFO. In assisting you, don't you think we need to make an audit of those that are around and see whether are there no finance people in HRD where they're not supposed to be? Okay. So that we don't bombard you with questions during the time of audit. Making an audit of the skills, then place people accordingly. If, for example, Mr. Mabon, the debate that I have raised with you doesn't find expression in the country, does that suggest that the debate must be stopped because it is raised by a province? If then the president is saying he wants to deal with the joblessness in the country, can that president succeed without the debate that I'm raising? The priorities of the presidents of this country depends on the thesis and understanding of the sector. Hence I'm saying to you, let's engage on this question. If we are for educational outcomes, then that work of that president becomes easier. But if we are for learning outcomes, then I can tell you, it means we have not resolved the compartmentalism planning in government. Because for them to get the skill that they talk about depends whether the overarching policy in education addresses that particular question. Kalomas bendisithi masivumelane silonche le program. Sivumelane into yokuba facilitators One amongst the tasks of this sector, the BcmTv Gade, is to take those that will be receiving the information outside of the comfort zone. We must take them outside of the comfort zone. Ingxaki yalapha ke ithethe ngesixhosa le nto. Ingxaki yalapha uzawufuneka uba sithetha nge-leadership, and of course leadership won't be separated a bit from management. How do you deal with the tendency of managers who always present themselves as politicians, not managers? If you are a manager, you are not going to be assessed according to the number of questions that you have asked. There is one politician here.
Amen.
Not me.
Yes. Amen.
There is one politician. You are not going to be assessed and adjudicated on the number of questions you ask. You are going to be assessed on the number of execution of the plans that have been put before you. That's what management is about. If there is a contestation of policy, then elevate that to the policymakers. Elevate that to the policymakers so that you don't waste your time creating an impression that there is an alternative policy whilst there is not. Don't waste your time here creating an impression that there is an alternative policy whilst there is nothing like that. The lawmakers and the policymakers must then address that deficiency. Ndiyaunderstand ke ngamanye amaxesha into yoba laa mfluqane ibangwa nasithi wena mfundisi ufetsha. What are the implications of a nation that allows illiterate people to preside over literate people? Because if you allow illiterate people in the form of the legislative arm of government, now they must come and access and oversight those that are illiterate, those that are literate. What is the meaning of that? I am saying you needed to engage on this discussion. Unfortunately, you can't be illiterate and oversight literate people. So those that are sending people to National Assembly and legislative arms of government must be seized with this question. If you talk oversight over executive, what are you trying to imply? Can an illiterate person, by virtue of being a member of parliament, oversight an academic? Is it possible? No, we are still dealing with the issue of leadership here. Don't be shying away. It's a tradition and a leadership question. Can an illiterate person oversight a literate person? Nalo, kakufika kwa construction pa komkhita, I become illiterate. You can't ask me why is isikolo sinje. I'm not an architect. I'm not a civil engineer. I'm an educationist. So that component must then ask, why have we been building schools that have got cracks? Equally, you can't ask them the pedagogy and the content of education. So we must know where the questions must go. We must know where questions must go and where answers are expected. Do you get my point? So, lendo yoba literate and illiterate, it doesn't mean you getting or not getting certificate. It talks about the skill, the expertise that are required at a particular point in time. Hence I'm saying, educated as we are, but we are not all-rounders. You can't ask me matters that have got more to do with litigation. I must go to Adaya. Adaya, what is the meaning of this?
Yes.
And Adaya briefed me. Then I become the mouthpiece. If there comes a question, I will say, I will find an answer. A waiter will come back. Why? Because I am representing an idea that is not originally from me. Right? So that's why I'm saying, colleagues, let's be patient. But critically for me now is on how we make our system efficient. Make sure that we produce as much results as possible, both in terms of the content and also in terms of the form. Make sure that we build the capacity of the state. And run away kids from these glorified lies. Run away from the glorified lies. Ngomso siku portfolio committee. And I know some of the questions that are going to be asked there already. Because colleagues, we have not agreed on the strategic question. Are you assessing us on the APP, or are you assessing us on the wish list? And what are the implications of assessing a state organ via a wish list? Because the APP that has been developed here has been adopted by the legislative arm, and therefore, if you talk school visit, why are you not visiting the schools that are part of the APP? And what are the implications of a resolution of the House that is based outside of the APP? Nanki umkhithi fumana imessage ngoku ethi kum, hey khanincede nakhe esisikolo. The under pressure was from the public, but institutionally and legally wrong la nto ndiyenzayo. Wrong, ever right because ke lomphathiswa ngweni. Wrong because ithi umkhida makaphume esiporweni. You must get out of the plan and execute something that is outside of the plan. And now you expect that CFO at the end of the year to get a clean audit. How? That CFO must get a clean audit, get messages that are outside of the plan. How? So you are then disrupting the system of operation and the management system of the institution. Guys, we're managing a public place here. Ngoku sikwisigaba esigqithileyo ekubeni sisakhile na isikolo okanye sisakhanga. Sikwisigaba ngosophendula into bana kutheni sakhiwe namhlanje singakhiwanga kulo nyaka upheleyo. So it means you must deal with the issue of the confidence and trust deficit beyond the service delivery that we're talking about. Ingxaki ngoku esifeyisene nayo service delivery. Ingxaki esifeyisene nayo kukuthembakala nokungathembakali kukarhulumente. Ngoku sowuzisa isikolo kodwa yima hlala phansi. Ngingaba njani sile 100 million uthetha ngayo? So which means abantu have graduated from just wanting service delivery, but they are building questions of integrity and credibility on the product itself. On the product itself. Ukuze imibuzo on the product now. Awubuzwa aba uzasikhanini. kuthiwa ngoku hayi besiyibonile i-double store eMqanduli kutheni ngeyo double store ngoku apha eMathole East ubuzwa loo nto. So I'm saying you must be used to get to that kind of questioning from a strategic point of view. My apologies, Mshotana, for taking much of your time, but I just wanted us to be a bit ahead of the events, utilize the space that we had, make sure that we have a building blocks in building the people, the state organs of the people, in particular in the province. We've got a history here of underdevelopment. So we must then deal with that and put it aside. We must arrive in a space where we are able to draw the human capital that is all over the country from the province back. Mabayeke usibuza kwa Facebook abantu base Eastern Cape abahlala eKapa. Mabagoduke. Bazocontribute ekwakhiweni kwe-Eastern Cape. Uba ideas of whatever, they must contribute. They must not ask us from a distance. Because bazawubenza abantu benza lanto baphele bebane attitude unnecessary. Yabona mos abanye abantu badalwe kakubi badalwe into bana xa kubuzwa imibuzo ngeperformance kaRhulumente ingathi ubuza into yakhe. So we must get out of that mentality. Thank you so much, Program Director.